The immaculate streets of Oak Haven Estates unfolded under a sky of flawless blue, a meticulously crafted diorama of suburban perfection. Beige houses, distinguished only by minor architectural flourishes, stood sentinel behind lawns manicured with obsessive precision. Life here pulsed with a quiet, regulated rhythm, orchestrated by the ever-vigilant, ever-present Homeowners Association. For Detective Mark Harrison, a man whose professional life was steeped in the often grim realities of protecting vulnerable children, this community represented a deliberate choice. He sought not architectural harmony, but a haven of perceived tranquility, a necessary buffer for his 17-year-old daughter, Maya. Maya was navigating the tumultuous currents of her final year of high school, a challenging time profoundly complicated by the unexpected, simultaneous journey of pregnancy, now showing visibly as she entered her third trimester. Her natural teenage anxieties, understandably amplified by her circumstances, were significantly mitigated by the steady, calming presence of Jasper. A gentle ginger cat with preternaturally soothing purrs, Jasper wasn't simply a companion animal. He was Maya's prescribed emotional support animal, ESA. His presence was deemed medically necessary by her therapist and physician to help manage anxiety levels critical to both her well-being and the healthy progression of her pregnancy. Mark, thorough and methodical in all things, had ensured every required piece of documentation was meticulously filed well before Jasper even arrived. Physicians' letters detailing the medical necessity, ESA certifications, even preemptive copies of the relevant sections of the Federal Fair Housing Act outlining protections for assistance animals, all provided directly to the HOA management company and, pointedly, to the HOA secretary, Eleanor Vance. Jasper's legitimacy was legally unassailable. But peace in Oak Haven was a carefully constructed illusion, perpetually vulnerable to the whims of Eleanor Vance. As the HOA secretary, Eleanor acted less as an administrator and more as the self-appointed chief enforcer of community propriety, wielding the extensive book of covenants, conditions, and restrictions like a sacred text, open only to her interpretation. A woman nearing 60, her sharp gray eyes seemed to constantly scan for infractions, her silver hair pulled back from her temples with such severity it appeared painful, mirroring the rigidity of her mindset. She conducted regular patrols of the shared spaces, the pristine pool enclosure, the small, overly manicured decorative garden near the clubhouse, the impeccably clean clubhouse walkways, radiating an aura of vigilant, preemptive disapproval. Eleanor seemed particularly, personally affronted by Maya's very existence within the community's manicured borders. A pregnant teenager, unmarried, her condition becoming undeniable, Maya represented a visible disruption, a discordant note in the symphony of affluent family perfection Eleanor guarded so fiercely. And Jasper, despite the stack of legal and medical documents Mark had repeatedly provided, became the lightning rod for Eleanor's focused displeasure. With unwavering obstinacy, Eleanor refused to acknowledge the legal standing or therapeutic necessity of Jasper's role. In her eyes, the ESA designation was nothing more than a manipulative scheme, a way to circumvent the rules, particularly the no animals permitted in common areas directive she championed with almost religious zeal. It was a loophole exploited by those who felt entitled to special treatment. The campaign of pressure began subtly, then gained momentum, becoming increasingly personal. Sharp, pointed glances that lingered uncomfortably whenever Maya sat quietly on a designated park bench near the community garden. Jasper leashed peacefully at her feet, Maya sketching in a pad to calm her nerves. Anonymous, neatly typed notes left tucked under their front door, citing obscure, selectively interpreted regulations about potential sanitation concerns, maintaining unimpeded aesthetic walkways, or the risk of introducing allergens into shared ventilation systems, referring to the clubhouse, where Jasper never went inside. Then came the public pronouncements during HOA meetings, timed for maximum impact, often delivered when Mark's unpredictable work schedule prevented his attendance, leaving Maya feeling isolated and exposed. Certain individuals, Eleanor had declared loudly during a contentious debate about implementing stricter parking regulations, her gaze sweeping the room before deliberately landing on Maya, who sat trying to make herself small in a chair near the exit. seem to operate under the misconception that personal situations grant them immunity from universally applied community standards. The room grew quiet, attendees shifting uncomfortably. Eleanor pressed on, her voice gaining a sharp, righteous edge. Such attitudes, however sympathetically one might view the individual's circumstances, the word dripped with insinuation, inevitably lead to a breakdown of collective order. It erodes the very foundation of our shared agreement, and, let us be frank, ultimately undermines the desirability and financial stability of this neighborhood for all responsible homeowners. The thinly veiled, public condemnation was brutal, clearly aimed, and left Maya flushed with shame and anxiety. Mark, hearing about this latest incident from Maya later that evening, felt a familiar cold fury mix with deep frustration. He sought Eleanor out the next day, finding her meticulously adjusting sprinklers near the community entrance. He approached calmly, determined to try reason one last time, though his hope was dwindling. "Eleanor," he began, keeping his voice level, professional, "we need to discuss the comments made at last night's meeting and this ongoing issue with Maya and Jasper." He held out fresh copies of the doctor's detailed letter outlining the medical necessity and the specific FHA statute printouts. "The law is crystal clear on this. Maya has a documented need, and Jasper is legally protected as her ESA. Your continued pressure constitutes harassment." Eleanor didn't even take the proffered papers. She straightened up, brushing imaginary dust from her crisp linen trousers, her lips thinning into a disapproving line. "Detective Harrison," she replied, her tone frosted with condescension, her use of his title a deliberate distancing mechanism. "Your parental advocacy is noted. However, the governing documents of this community, approved by the homeowners, are painstakingly clear and exist to protect the entire community's interests." Her eyes, cold and hard as gray flint, met his. "Established protocols cannot be selectively ignored based on subjective claims or external documents that contradict our internal regulations. It invites chaos, detective. Pure chaos." She paused, then added, a strange bitterness underlying her tone. "Rules apply to everyone, regardless of circumstance. No exceptions." A flash of memory, sharp and unwelcome, pierced Eleanor's composure for a fleeting instant. Standing before this very same HOA board 5 years prior, shortly after her husband Arthur's sudden death, clutching a therapist's letter recommending an emotional support dog for her own crushing loneliness and anxiety. The board president, a man she now routinely overruled, had shaken his head regretfully. "Eleanor, the rules are the rules. No pets in condo units back then. Terribly sorry, but no exceptions." The rejection had felt like another failure, another instance of rules thwarting her needs. Now, she held the power, she enforced the rules, and she would grant no exceptions, especially not for a situation she found morally untidy. The memory solidified her resolve, fueling her righteous certainty. "This isn't a subjective claim, Eleanor," Mark countered, his voice tight with contained anger. "It's a medical necessity backed by federal law. You are deliberately choosing to ignore that, and you are causing significant distress to my daughter during a high-risk pregnancy. This stops now, or my next step involves formal legal action against you and the HOA." Eleanor merely raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Threats, detective? How unprofessional. Do what you feel you must. But the community regulations will be upheld." She turned her back, dismissing him completely, and returned to inspecting a sprinkler head. Her intransigence was absolute, terrifyingly so. Maya and Jasper were not individuals requiring legally mandated accommodation. They were symbols of disorder, threatening the perfect, controlled world Eleanor desperately needed to maintain. Mark felt a chilling premonition, a deep unease settling in his gut. His professional life was dedicated to intervening before harm occurred, recognizing the warning signs when rigid ideology fixated on a vulnerable target. He saw those signs now, directed at his own family, cloaked in the mundane vernacular of community association governance. He wrestled again with the decision to escalate formally, file the HUD complaint, retain an attorney. But the potential fallout for Maya weighed heavily. The stress of depositions, the feeling of being scrutinized, the potential for intensified, albeit more subtle, harassment from Eleanor. Could Maya handle that right now? Could the pregnancy? He decided to document everything meticulously, build his case file, hoping Eleanor might overplay her hand in a way that was undeniable, provable, forcing the HOA board itself to intervene before he had to drag Maya through a legal battle. He tragically, severely underestimated the vindictive depths of Eleanor's obsession, her unwavering conviction in her own righteousness, and her willingness to escalate far beyond mere harassment. Thursday afternoon arrived, thick and still, the air heavy with impending summer heat. Eleanor, watching from her window overlooking the common area, saw her moment arrive. She observed Maya settle onto her usual shaded bench near the clubhouse, textbook open in her lap. Jasper, leashed as always, explored the patch of grass nearby. Eleanor knew the clubhouse kitchen layout intimately. She knew the side service door was frequently, carelessly, left unlatched after morning deliveries or cleaning shifts. She also knew, from her calculated inspection earlier that week, exactly where the small, dome-shaped security camera was positioned high in the corner of the kitchen ceiling. And she knew, because she had done it herself under the guise of checking for dust buildup the previous evening, that its power cable was currently disconnected at the junction box, rendering it temporarily inert. She had double-checked its offline status on the secure HOA monitoring app accessed only by board members, confirming her digital invisibility inside the kitchen. She briefly considered the freezer's IT temperature monitor, that asset protection upgrade insisted upon by the board after the summer barbecue spoilage incident last year. An annoyance, potentially generating a log entry if the door was held open too long, but it offered no visual record. Easily explained away as checking stock, if necessary. Her primary concern was eliminating any visual evidence of her direct interaction with the animal inside the building. Armed with a small, easily concealable tin of particularly pungent tuna pâté, she moved with quiet purpose. She slipped unnoticed into the cool, silent kitchen through the unlatched side service door, melting into the shadows near the imposing walk-in freezer. Outside, Maya read, trying to focus, the heat making her feel lethargic. The leash lay looped loosely over her wrist as Jasper, nose twitching, investigated an interesting scent near the slightly ajar kitchen door, just a few feet away from the bench. From the shadows within, Eleanor made a soft, clicking sound, a noise designed to pique feline curiosity. She carefully cracked open the tuna tin, letting the strong, fishy aroma waft out into the humid air. Jasper's head snapped up, ears swiveling towards the source. His tail gave a tentative twitch. The scent was powerfully alluring. He glanced back towards Maya, engrossed in her book, then towards the cool darkness emanating from the doorway. After only a moment's pause, driven by instinct and the irresistible promise of a treat, he padded cautiously, silently, through the opening into the kitchen. With practiced, chilling speed and efficiency honed by years of trapping stray cats in her previous neighborhood, Eleanor scooped up the startled animal before he could fully register the situation. She clamped a hand gently but firmly over his muzzle, muffling his surprised, indignant meow. She moved swiftly across the cool tiled floor to the heavy, stainless steel door of the walk-in freezer. Pulling the thick, insulated door open with a determined grunt, the frigid air swirling out around her, she ignored the cat's sudden, frantic struggles. Without hesitation, she thrust the confused, terrified animal inside onto a cold, unforgiving wire shelf crowded with boxes of frozen hamburger patties and forgotten tubs of institutional ice cream. She slammed the heavy door shut. The robust latch mechanism engaged with a solid, final, metallic click, designed for maintaining sub-zero temperatures, not for internal escape. Violation addressed, Eleanor whispered aloud to the silent kitchen, a tremor of vindication in her voice. She meticulously wiped her hands on a paper towel, as if cleansing herself of contamination. Standards must be maintained. Order restored. A grim, tight smile of profound satisfaction touched her lips. She exited the kitchen as silently as she had entered, leaving the side door slightly ajar as she had found it, and walked away briskly towards the HOA office wing of the clubhouse, her mission clinically, successfully accomplished. A minute or two passed. Maya shifted on the bench, the heat oppressive. She glanced down, a sudden, inexplicable unease prompting her to check the leash. It lay limp, the metal clip resting empty on the blades of grass. "Jasper," she called softly, her brow furrowing. Then louder, a note of concern entering her voice. "Kitty? Jasper, where did you go?" Panic began to bloom, cold and sharp, in her chest. She stood up quickly, perhaps too quickly for her current condition, her hand instinctively flying to her rounded belly as a wave of lightheadedness washed over her. Fear, raw and immediate, spiked through her system, making her heart pound erratically. "Jasper! Jasper!" she cried out, her voice cracking with nascent terror. She began searching frantically, desperately, around the dense azalea bushes bordering the clubhouse wall, her calls becoming increasingly desperate, tears starting to well and spill hotly down her cheeks. "Jasper! Please! Kitty!" Other residents were beginning their usual evening routines, a couple walking their small dog on the far side of the manicured green space, someone collecting mail from the communal boxes near the main entrance. But no one seemed to have noticed the small ginger cat's abrupt disappearance. Maya circled the silent clubhouse building, peering frantically into the tinted windows, her small frame trembling with mounting terror, sobbing his name over and over into the quiet, indifferent evening air. "Jasper! Oh, please, where are you?" Miles away across the city, Mark Harrison sat hunched over his desk at police headquarters, immersed in the complex, often disturbing details of a multi-jurisdictional child abduction case file. The demanding work required intense focus. The sterile quiet of his small office was abruptly broken by a specific, high-priority notification chime from his department-issued smartphone. It wasn't a standard crime alert. It was a system notification pushed from the Oak Haven Estates Integrated Security Network. As the community's designated police liaison, a role he now deeply regretted accepting, and a resident whose sensitive job necessitated certain monitored access privileges, he occasionally received system status updates. This alert, however, was flagged as critical. He tapped it open, expecting a notification about a gate malfunction or perhaps a fire alarm test. Instead, the text read, "Critical alert, Oak Haven Clubhouse, freezer unit temp deviation, rapid decrease. Internal temp, -18 degrees Celsius, -0.4 degrees Fahrenheit, falling. Door sensor, closed. Asset integrity protocol, active. Potential equipment malfunction. Ref ID, 7AQ, L2. Mark frowned, annoyed. The damn freezer again? Threatening hundreds of dollars worth of frozen burgers for the upcoming 4th of July barbecue, no doubt. He nearly dismissed it, intending to just forward the alert to the HOA maintenance contact. That was their problem. But as he reached to tap, acknowledge, his personal cell phone, lying beside the work phone, erupted with a frantic incoming call. It was Maya. His heart lurched. He answered instantly, hearing the raw, breathless panic in her voice before she could even choke out his name. "Dad. Dad, it's Jasper. He's gone. He just vanished. I was right here, sitting on the bench by the clubhouse, reading, and he was right beside me on the leash, and then he was just gone. I can't find him anywhere. I've been calling and calling." "Oh, Dad, what if someone took him? What if Eleanor?" Her voice broke into a terrified sob. The pieces slammed together in Mark's mind with the force of a physical blow, cold and sickening. The critical freezer alert. The rapidly dropping temperature despite the door being closed. Maya frantic, right by the clubhouse. Jasper missing. Eleanor's escalating hostility, her obsessive focus. The kitchen security camera he knew was currently offline, preventing any visual confirmation. This wasn't an equipment malfunction threatening frozen assets. This was deliberate. This was Eleanor fulfilling her implied threat. He didn't need a visual feed to understand the monstrous calculation. Eleanor hadn't just taken the cat to prove a point about rules. She'd put him somewhere dangerously cold, somewhere she knew could cause rapid harm or death. The walk-in freezer. An act of breathtaking cruelty disguised as upholding standards, targeting not just an animal, but through that animal, aiming directly, viciously, at the well-being of his pregnant, vulnerable daughter. The potential consequences flashed through his mind with horrifying clarity. Severe hypothermia setting in within minutes for a small animal. Organ damage. Death. Mark was already moving, his training kicking in, pushing past the wave of nausea and rage. He cut Maya off, his voice tight, low, urgent, but deliberately calm to avoid escalating her panic further. "Maya, listen very carefully. Stay exactly where you are. Do not confront anyone. Call my cell phone back immediately if you see anything suspicious, anything at all. I'm on my way. I'm coming right now." Simultaneously, he keyed his police radio, his voice clipped, professional, but underscored with a barely contained urgency that made the dispatcher sit up straighter. "Dispatch, this is Commander Harrison. Requesting immediate patrol unit backup, Code 3, and Animal Control urgent response to Oak Haven Estates Clubhouse, 1 Community Circle. Updating previous request. Situation involves confirmed active felony animal cruelty, Potential felony child endangerment. Suspect identified as female, Eleanor Vance, mid-50s, likely still on premises or nearby. I am en route. ETA approximately 4 minutes. He didn't wait for the dispatcher's formal acknowledgement, already sprinting through the station corridors towards the underground parking garage, grabbing his emergency response kit on the way. The unmarked vehicle's lights and siren tore through the late afternoon traffic the instant he cleared the garage ramp and hit the open street. His professional duty warred fiercely with raw paternal terror. He reached the sprawling Oak Haven Estates clubhouse complex in just under 4 minutes, the drive a hyper-focused blur of controlled speed and adrenaline-fueled concentration. Tires protested faintly as he slewed the unmarked sedan to an abrupt halt near the main clubhouse entrance, engine still running. He saw Maya immediately, standing near the ornate front steps, pale face streaked with tears, being spoken to by a concerned-looking elderly resident who gestured vaguely towards the side of the building. He registered the scene, Maya's distress tearing at him, but didn't stop, didn't slow his momentum. His objective was singular, immediate. He headed straight for the kitchen's side service entrance, the one near the bench, the one Maya indicated Jasper disappeared near, the one Eleanor had almost certainly used. His right hand rested instinctively, automatically, on the grip of his holstered service weapon, years of training overriding conscious thought, though a fervent prayer flashed through his mind that its use wouldn't be required. He hit the unlatched service door hard with his shoulder, bursting through it into the silent, brightly lit, sterile kitchen. Empty. The low hum of refrigerators was the only sound. His eyes went instantly, magnetically, to the imposing, brushed stainless steel door of the walk-in freezer unit set against the far wall. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm of dread and hope. He lunged across the tiled floor, covering the distance in 3 long strides. He gripped the heavy, industrial handle, yanking it downward with forceful, desperate urgency. The rush of frigid, stale, freezer-burned air hit him like a physical blow to the chest as the heavy, insulated door swung outward. And there, huddled miserably on a cold, unforgiving wire shelf, squeezed between forgotten boxes of frozen French fries and institutional-sized tubs of vanilla ice cream, was Jasper. The small ginger cat was shivering violently, uncontrollably, his delicate frame racked with tremors. His bright orange fur was visibly coated with fine, sparkling frost crystals, making him look like a macabre confection. His movements were terrifyingly sluggish, weak, uncoordinated. He managed to lift his head slightly, letting out a tiny, pathetic, almost inaudible mewl, a sound of pure suffering that ripped through Mark's heart. Relief, overwhelming and absolute, crashed over him, immediately followed by a surge of incandescent, white-hot rage directed at the perpetrator of this cruelty. Mark gently, carefully, scooped the freezing, trembling little body into his arms, his own hands recoiling slightly from the shocking coldness of Jasper's fur. He immediately tucked the cat deep inside his jacket, zipping it up partially, trying desperately to share his own body heat, shielding the small form against his chest. "It's okay, buddy. It's okay now. I got you," he murmured, his voice thick with a volatile mixture of profound relief and simmering fury. Jasper felt dangerously, frighteningly cold against his skin. Just then, the rhythmic click of sensible heels echoed from the main clubhouse hallway connecting to the kitchen. Eleanor Vance walked briskly into the kitchen through the interior doorway, holding a manila folder and a clipboard, an expression of brisk, purposeful authority firmly fixed on her face, clearly intending to officially document the empty freezer or perhaps stage a discovery later. She stopped dead in her tracks just inside the doorway, her eyes widening in stunned disbelief as she took in the scene. Mark Harrison standing there, jacket partially zipped revealing the shivering ginger cat pressed against his chest, his face a mask of cold, controlled, utterly dangerous rage. Simultaneously, the uniformed patrol officer Mark had requested burst through the side service door, hand hovering near his own weapon, alert and assessing the situation, closely followed by a uniformed animal control officer carrying a specialized heated transport carrier. "Detective Harrison," Eleanor began, her voice attempting its usual clipped, authoritative tone, but it faltered badly, cracking with sudden, dawning realization and fear. What is the meaning of this? This is highly irregular. That animal is strictly, expressly forbidden within clubhouse facilities, particularly the sanitary kitchen. I was merely investigating a report, preparing to document the violation." Her words trailed off under Mark's glacial stare. "Securing evidence, Eleanor? Is that what you call it?" Mark interrupted, his voice lethally quiet, each word precisely enunciated, dripping with controlled fury. He carefully, gently handed the shivering, whimpering Jasper to the waiting animal control officer, who immediately placed the cat inside the pre-warmed, oxygen-equipped carrier, starting a rapid assessment of his core temperature and vital signs. You deliberately lured a legally recognized emotional support animal, an animal documented as vital to the physical and mental stability of my pregnant daughter, into this commercial freezer and sealed the door. You intentionally, maliciously created a potentially lethal situation. He took a deliberate step towards her, his tall frame seeming to fill the sterile room, his gaze never leaving her face, pinning her in place. I know you did it. The freezer's own internal sensor system sent out a critical alert because of the rapid temperature drop caused by the living creature you trapped inside. An alert I received. He saw the flicker of confusion morph into outright panic in her eyes. The technology she ignored had betrayed her. And your clumsy attempt to disable the kitchen security camera beforehand? That premeditation is also noted. Eleanor's face paled dramatically, losing its pinched severity to a slack-jawed expression of shock and dawning terror. Sensor. Alert. Camera. That's impossible. It's illegal surveillance. An outrageous invasion of privacy. You fabricated that. You have no right. That critical alert from the freezer's own system, combined with the clear evidence of your tampering with the security camera, Mark stated flatly, cutting off her frantic sputtering, his voice echoing slightly in the suddenly silent, tiled room. Nodding curtly to the patrol officer who now stepped forward purposefully, positioning himself between Eleanor and the doorway, provides more than sufficient probable cause documenting your direct involvement in committing multiple serious felonies. He ticked them off again, his voice devoid of emotion, but heavy with the inescapable weight of legal statutes. Felony animal cruelty under State Statute 597, subsection B, involving intentional torture, malicious deprivation of sustenance and vital warmth, creating imminent risk of death. Willful felony child endangerment under Penal Code 273A, by intentionally inflicting extreme, unjustifiable mental suffering on a known minor, exacerbated by her documented medical vulnerability and high-risk pregnancy, through the malicious targeting of her essential support animal. He paused, letting the gravity sink in. And likely felony burglary as well, for entering a restricted area after disabling security measures with the clear intent to commit those crimes therein. The uniformed patrol officer stepped directly in front of the now visibly trembling Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance, his voice was firm, formal, leaving no room for argument. You are under arrest. No, this is preposterous. It's a misunderstanding. It's absurd. Eleanor shrieked finally, finding her voice again, trying instinctively to back away, her eyes darting frantically around the kitchen as if seeking escape. He's just a cat, a simple animal, a nuisance violating the rules. She's just a spoiled, irresponsible teenager using flimsy excuses, making problems for everyone. I am the HOA secretary. I was upholding the established community directives, protecting our shared environment, our standards. She gestured wildly with the folder and clipboard, papers scattering across the floor. The rule of law applies here too, Eleanor, Mark said quietly, his voice like chips of ice, watching with grim, detached satisfaction as the patrol officer efficiently overcame her brief, frantic resistance and secured the metal handcuffs behind her back with practiced expertise. Criminal statutes, especially those involving intentional cruelty and endangerment of a minor, significantly supersede your personal interpretation of community guidelines. He paused, regardless of how strongly you believe in them. Eleanor continued her sputtering, incoherent protests about rules, regulations, resident complaints about that girl, declining neighborhood prestige, violations, and blatant harassment as she was firmly but professionally escorted, stunned, furious, and ignominiously handcuffed, out of the clubhouse kitchen through the side door, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. The closing door of the patrol car muffled her indignant cries, leaving a sudden, heavy silence in the kitchen, broken only by the hum of the refrigerators and the soft whirring of the heater in Jasper's carrier. Mark took a deep, ragged breath, the adrenaline finally beginning to recede, leaving behind a profound, bone-deep weariness and a still simmering, righteous rage. He turned and went immediately to find Maya, his heart aching for the terror she had endured, needing to see for himself that she was okay. She collapsed into his arms when she saw him approach, her relief overwhelming when the animal control officer emerged moments later, assuring them that Jasper was responding well to the warming treatment and seemed likely to make a full recovery, though needing immediate, thorough veterinary examination. Mark held his daughter close, rocking her gently, whispering assurances that Jasper would be okay, that she was safe now, and that Eleanor Vance would face severe, unavoidable legal consequences for her calculated, malicious actions. Jasper, after a tense overnight stay at the veterinary emergency clinic involving intravenous fluids, warming blankets, and careful monitoring, was thankfully given a clean bill of health, suffering only mild, temporary effects from the hypothermia. Within 24 hours, he was back home, seemingly unfazed, immediately resuming his vital duties as Maya's steadfast, purring guardian, perhaps sticking even closer to her side than before, a small, furry shadow of comfort. The emotional toll on Maya, however, proved substantial and deeply unsettling. The traumatic incident, the fear of Jasper's loss, the violation of her safe space, the confirmation of Eleanor's targeted malice, significantly exacerbated her anxiety and stress levels during a medically critical phase of her pregnancy. Her therapist and obstetrician carefully documented the severe emotional distress and related physiological impacts, including elevated blood pressure readings, directly attributable to Eleanor's actions. This medical documentation added considerable weight to the child endangerment charge, framing Eleanor's actions not merely as cruel or vindictive, but as posing a tangible, documented risk to the health of both Maya and her unborn child. The subsequent police investigation moved forward methodically. Detectives confirmed the kitchen security camera had been deliberately disconnected prior to the incident. Their attempts to retrieve the crucial IoT sensor logs from the freezer unit, however, hit an unexpected, frustrating dead end. When forensic technicians accessed the HOA's cloud-based security system interface, the same system Eleanor, as secretary, possessed administrative credentials for, they discovered the specific log files pertaining to the freezer's temperature fluctuations and door status for the entire afternoon in question had been expertly, irrevocably wiped clean. Eleanor, either in the brief window between Mark receiving the initial alert and her arrest, or perhaps even remotely accessing the system shortly after being taken into custody, before her credentials could be revoked, had managed to digitally shred the core electronic evidence linking the freezer's anomalous behavior directly to the time Jasper was inside. She had anticipated the sensor data might be used against her and taken steps to eliminate it, believing she had neutralized the most damning proof. The prosecution's case, while still strong on circumstantial grounds and motive, now lacked the definitive, time-stamped electronic data proving exactly when Jasper was placed inside and how long he was subjected to the freezing temperatures. They would have to rely heavily on Mark's testimony regarding the initial alert, now unverifiable without the logs, Maya's emotional account, the vet's findings on Jasper's condition, and the evidence of camera tampering, hoping it was enough to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. A palpable sense of frustration settled over the district attorney's team. Eleanor's cunning had created a significant hurdle. The trial began several months later, the courtroom charged with tension and media attention garnered by the unusual nature of the case. The HOA secretary, the pregnant teen, the ESA cat, the freezer. The prosecution laid out its case piece by piece. Maya's tearful but composed testimony about Jasper's importance and her terror during his disappearance. Mark's professional account of the events, including the initial sensor alert he received but could no longer produce logs for. The veterinarian detailing Jasper's critical condition upon arrival. The documentation of Maya's heightened medical risks following the incident. They presented evidence of Eleanor's prior documented hostility towards Maya and Jasper, establishing motive. They showed photos of the disconnected camera cable. The defense attorney, sharp and experienced, skillfully exploited the evidentiary gap. He painted Mark's testimony about the now-deleted sensor alert as potentially biased, colored by parental emotion, and ultimately uncorroborated. He emphasized the disabled camera, suggesting it prevented anyone from knowing definitively what truly transpired inside the kitchen. He argued that while Eleanor might have been strict about rules, there was no concrete, undeniable proof she harbored criminal intent or personally placed the cat in the freezer. He suggested other possibilities: the cat wandering in accidentally, the door somehow closing on its own, perhaps another resident being involved. He portrayed Eleanor as a dedicated community volunteer, perhaps overzealous, but certainly not a malicious criminal capable of deliberate cruelty or child endangerment. He sowed seeds of reasonable doubt, and they seemed to be taking root. The mood in the courtroom grew heavy with uncertainty. Mark felt a sickening knot tighten in his stomach as he watched the jury, their faces impassive, difficult to read. The prosecution seemed cornered, their momentum stalled by the missing logs. The judge looked poised to hear closing arguments, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. Then, the lead prosecutor stood, shuffling some papers, a new, almost hesitant energy about him. "Your Honor," he addressed the bench, "the prosecution has just been made aware of potential new evidence, which came to light through an unrelated investigation and requires immediate presentation. We call Mr. Samuel Chen to the stand." A murmur went through the courtroom. Who was Samuel Chen? The defense lawyer objected strenuously: surprise witness, lack of discovery. But the judge, sensing the potential significance, allowed it, cautioning the prosecutor. A man in the uniform of a major package delivery service walked nervously to the stand. "Mr. Chen," the prosecutor began, "were you making deliveries in the Oak Haven Estates community on the afternoon of Thursday, June 15th? "Yes, sir. Had a regular route there." "And around approximately 4:30 p.m. that day, where was your delivery truck parked?" "I had a pickup at the clubhouse office," Chen stated, consulting his log sheet. "So my truck was parked right out front, in the designated loading zone, facing towards the main entrance and the side service door area." "And is your delivery truck equipped with any recording devices?" "Yes, sir," Chen nodded. "Standard procedure now. Forward-facing dash cam, records continuously while the engine is running, primarily for accident documentation and driver security." "And did you provide the footage from that camera for that time frame to law enforcement recently?" "Yes, sir. Detectives contacted my company last week regarding a separate investigation into some porch piracy incidents in that same neighborhood around that time. They reviewed several days of footage from multiple trucks on that route. Yesterday, a detective called me back, very excited, asking about the footage from that specific afternoon near the clubhouse." The prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the footage was obtained through proper channels for a separate investigation but contains direct, material evidence relevant to the case at bar. We request permission to play the authenticated dashcam recording from Mr. Chen's vehicle." The defense lawyer erupted in objections: chain of custody, relevance, unfair surprise, but the judge, leaning forward intently, overruled him sharply. "The court will see this footage. Proceed." The courtroom lights dimmed once more. The large screens flickered to life, displaying a clear, wide-angle, color view from the perspective of the parked delivery truck's dashboard. The footage showed the quiet clubhouse exterior. It showed Maya sitting on the bench, reading. It showed Jasper on his leash nearby. Then, it clearly captured Eleanor Vance slipping out of the side kitchen door, looking furtively left and right, before making enticing sounds towards Jasper. It showed Jasper cautiously approaching and disappearing through the doorway. Critically, it then showed Eleanor emerging from the same side door several minutes later, alone, wiping her hands on her slacks with a distinct air of finality and grim satisfaction, before turning and walking briskly towards the clubhouse office wing. The timestamp in the corner of the footage aligned perfectly with Maya's frantic search beginning moments later. It didn't show what happened inside the kitchen or the freezer, but it provided the crucial, undeniable external visual link: Eleanor luring the cat towards the kitchen, Eleanor emerging without the cat shortly thereafter, directly corroborating the timeline and demonstrating clear opportunity and intent related to Jasper's disappearance near that specific location. It shattered the defense's narrative of accidental circumstance or unknown third-party involvement. A collective gasp echoed through the silent courtroom. Eleanor Vance stared at the screen, her face a mask of utter disbelief and horror, her mouth opening and closing silently like a stranded fish. She made a small, choked sound and seemed to physically crumple in her chair, all pretense of composure gone. Her attorney stood beside her, utterly frozen, staring at the screen, his carefully constructed defense obliterated in seconds by the unexpected eye of a delivery truck camera. The jury's deliberation, after this stunning reveal, was remarkably swift. Less than 30 minutes. Guilty. On all counts, felony animal cruelty, felony child endangerment. The hate crime enhancement, supported by the documented pattern of harassment targeting Maya's protected status and Jasper's role, was also decisively affirmed. At the sentencing hearing, the judge's words were unsparing, delivered with cold judicial fury. Ms. Vance, your meticulous efforts to conceal your crime, including the destruction of electronic evidence, were ultimately undone by sheer chance in the ubiquitous nature of modern recording technology. Your actions demonstrate a chilling lack of empathy, a profound disregard for the law, and a willingness to inflict serious harm upon the vulnerable, both human and animal, in service of your distorted obsession with superficial order and control. This court must send an unequivocal message that such calculated cruelty, masked by a perversion of civic duty, will not be tolerated. Eleanor Vance was sentenced to 5 years in state prison, the term reflecting the gravity of the combined offenses and the deliberate, malicious nature of her actions. Significant financial penalties and restitution orders were imposed, and liens were immediately placed against her Oak Haven home and other assets, effectively ensuring she would lose the very property and status she claimed her actions were intended to protect. The story of the trial, particularly the dramatic, last-minute reveal of the delivery truck dashcam footage, became a media sensation, sparking national conversations about HOA powers, disability rights, animal cruelty, and the unexpected ways technology bears witness. #DashcamJustice joined the lexicon. Donations flooded into animal rescue organizations and groups supporting pregnant teens. The Oak Haven Estates HOA board, facing overwhelming public condemnation and the imminent threat of a massive civil lawsuit from the Harrisons, undertook immediate and radical reforms. A formal, public apology was issued. Eleanor Vance was permanently banned from the community upon her eventual release from prison. All governing documents pertaining to ESAs, reasonable accommodations, and resident conduct were completely rewritten under legal supervision to ensure full, explicit compliance with federal and state laws, with mandatory, ongoing sensitivity and legal compliance training instituted for all current and future board members. Mark and Maya, deeply moved by the outpouring of public support, decided to channel the positive energy generated by their ordeal. Utilizing substantial donated funds initially intended for Jasper's ongoing care and potential future therapy needs, they partnered with local advocacy groups to help establish Maya's Beacon, a well-funded nonprofit initiative dedicated to providing grants for essential therapy animals and wraparound support services for pregnant teenagers and young parents facing anxiety, discrimination, and housing challenges throughout the city. Maya, with Mark's unwavering support and Jasper curled faithfully, protectively nearby, welcomed a healthy, thriving baby boy into the world a few months after the trial's conclusion. She successfully completed her high school requirements online and began pursuing college courses in social work, her own harrowing experience galvanizing a deep desire to advocate for others navigating difficult, vulnerable circumstances. Oak Haven Estate slowly, cautiously, began its own process of healing and rebuilding trust, the memory of Eleanor Vance's reign of petty tyranny serving as a stark, enduring warning against the dangers of unchecked power and prejudice. Eleanor, meanwhile, commenced serving her lengthy sentence behind prison walls, her meticulously ordered world shrunk to the confines of a cell, a final, ironic testament to the destructive consequences of weaponized rules and a heart hardened against compassion. The quiet on Maple Drive, and throughout Oak Haven, began to feel less like tense suppression and more like genuine, hard-won peace.